I thank you all for coming here today. I'm State Representative Tom Weber. I represent District 64. Sophia Faye Davis, Damari Perry, Zaris Walker, Navin Jones. These are the children that we've lost to child abuse since January, despite extensive contact with DCFS. In the case of young Navin, the Peoria County coroner said that he had never seen a worse case of child abuse and neglect. An 8-year-old boy weighing literally the same as my 2-year-old granddaughter. Neglect like that can only occur after weeks of mistreatment, weeks of alarm bells raised, and weeks of inaction by DCFS. Funding for DCFS has increased from $1.2 billion in fiscal year 2019 to $1.55 billion in fiscal year 2022. And there's currently even further proposed increases in the department's annual budget for FY23. What do we have to show? 8 contempt of court charges and more senseless child abuse deaths. Today we're proposing a systemic overview of the deaths and contempt orders of DCFS. We've filed H.R. 824 calling on the Illinois Auditor General to audit DCFS and examine the following. Changes the department has made thus far to prevent further deaths of DCFS-involved youth, to prevent unnecessary psychiatric stays, and to better serve the interest of system-involved youth. Exactly what monitoring is conducted and what can be improved regarding the safeguards and protocols in place to ensure the safety of children in care. The amount of state money expended by DCFS or any other state agency over the past 2 fiscal years to address preventable deaths and unwarranted stays in psychiatric facilities, and how these steps that the department has taken to come into compliance with the court orders holding DCFS Director Mark Smith in contempt, and how much money in the department is wasting on defending current DCFS Director from contempt of court charges and lawsuits. Illinois legislature needs to step up our oversight, and a full independent performance audit is needed because we cannot rely on the documents and words of an agency defending its own actions better than the children in their care. The legislature's job is to provide oversight to our state's agencies. We have done atrociously over the past 2 years, ceded too much power to the governor's administration and a clearly inept bureaucracy. We need to step up. There's been enough talk. We need to take action. April 15th is the 3-year anniversary of the death of A.J. Friend. I've been fighting for changes to DCFS for 3 years, and Governor Pritzker has been giving empty promises of change for that same amount of time. I invite all of you to attend Roar for AJ, a grassroots group to draw attention to his death. We'll be in the Rotunda tomorrow, and I invite everyone to go out there to see them. The children who've been failed by DCFS need us fighting for them. And when you go out there and you see their display, you'll see and understand who we're fighting for. Thank you. Next up, I want to introduce Representative Welter.
Thank you, Tom. State Representative David Welter of the 75th District, also the House Republican Conference Chairperson. As Representative Weber just stated, DCFS Director Mark Smith has now been held in contempt 8 times. If you recall, just about 2 weeks ago, the House Republicans did an interview here in this room where we spoke about his 6 contempt of court orders. And I said at that point there was a hearing that was going to happen, I believe, later that day. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw additional contempt orders. And we have. Within that time, we've seen 2 additional ones. Each of these 8 contempt orders represent a real child in the state of Illinois, a youth in care. Each one of these people have a family or had a family, and we failed them as a state. So I think it's important. Obviously, they're minors, so their names are left out, but I want to give an example here of how serious some of these cases were that led to a director, a state director, being held in contempt of court. A 9-year-old girl that suffered years of physical and sexual abuse at home. Then after entering DCFS care, she was put into a psychiatric hospital. She was medically ready to be discharged back in June of 2021. But by January of this year, she remained hospitalized. That's one of these examples. Somebody who was lost in the system. We keep hearing about that. A 13-year-old boy in DCFS care was forced to sleep in a storage room. We heard about that. That child was then sent to a downstate shelter and has been stuck there for the last 145 days. A teenage girl who in the span of 3 months went through at least 15 placements, which have included foster homes, shelters, psychiatric hospitalization, and hospital emergency rooms. For a time, officials said the girl resided at the end of a long hallway in a windowless room. Unacceptable. A 6-year-old boy who has spent more than 375 days, almost the whole time he has been in DCFS custody, and a shelter that does not have the resources to support his given intellectual and cognitive disabilities. Our most vulnerable, not getting the care that they deserve. A 14-year-old girl was taken into temporary DCFS custody last September. Since then, she has been moved 21 times. She was stuck in psychiatric hospital and was then moved around to different shelters, hospital emergency rooms, DCFS offices, and emergency foster placements. And last but not least, here on my list of terrible examples of where the state failed our youth in care, an 11-year-old girl who has been ready to get out of psychiatric hospitals since last April. While she has been locked in the facility, she has not received services such as speech therapy. She also has not been allowed to go outdoors, and she has barely been receiving education. For nearly a year now, the girl has received just 1 hour a day of schooling. Kids are in danger across this state. Governor Pritzker and his party have failed, and they need to correct the situation. We should not be seeing additional contempt orders. We should move everything we can to help save these kids and protect the youth that's in our care. Next up, we have Representative Chris Boss.
Good morning. I'm State Representative Chris Boss. I cover the 51st House District, which includes communities of Lake County, suburban Lake County, and Cook County. As my colleagues have spelled out, we are facing a crisis. But this is not like other problems that this state casually themes a crisis. Children are dying. Kids who have experienced severe trauma are being held in psych wards for months beyond their discharge dates when they're approved. Further suffering is brought on because of that. For those who are not aware or familiar with my background and my career prior to joining the General Assembly, I've spent numerous years working and advocating for kids and youth. Right before coming here to Springfield, I worked for an organization that runs the only safe house in the state of Illinois, in the entire state, to protect underage victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. So when I speak on this issue, I'm not simply speaking from a place of outrage. I'm speaking from a place of firsthand knowledge to the suffering that these children are facing. Despite the efforts of my colleagues with me here today and many others, there has been a profound unwillingness by the Pritzker administration to acknowledge the failures of DCFS and make the changes needed to address these failures. But I don't want to make this a partisan issue. This absolutely should not be partisan. We're talking about children, our most vulnerable children, who we as a state have a fundamental responsibility to protect, and we are failing them miserably. A couple of weeks ago, when asked at a press conference about the 8th contempt charge ordered for Director Smith of DCFS, Governor Pritzker essentially said the judges issuing those orders don't know what they're talking about. Republicans, for speaking up and asking for action, don't know what they're talking about. And once again, he blamed his predecessor. Governor, the children who died in 2019, in 2020, in 2021, and this year cannot be blamed on your predecessor. The children being held for months in the hospital without being properly placed or forced to sleep on the floor in an office in 2019, in 2020, in 2021, and currently right now cannot be blamed on your predecessor. Governor, I have looked into the eyes of more young girls who have suffered horrendous abuse than I ever wished to. But I thank God every day they were able to intervene. There was a group able to intervene and give them a safe place to recover and to heal. Since the solutions that have been offered have been perpetually rejected, we are calling on this comprehensive audit to DCFS to get the data that is needed to force action and to stop these senseless tragedies. This audit is needed to shed more light on why reports that include descriptions like sickly malnourished or points to clear signs of bruises and ligature marks are being ignored by supervisors. Let's get this information and let's finally do something. The fact is that the vast majority of rank and file DCFS caseworkers are doing the best they can under very difficult circumstances. But there's a fundamental breakdown in the leadership structure of this agency. To the governor, to the Democrat leaders in the House and the Senate, please work with us. If you will not allow other measures to reform DCFS to advance, many of those bipartisan, then join us in advancing this audit before the end of session adjourns so we can take action. Children's lives are at stake. And if we do nothing more than skirt around the edge of the real overhauls that DCFS is needed, shame on us. Thank you. We'll now be open to questions.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.